My parents came here from Vietnam in 1975. They came in the aftermath of a war which many Americans disapproved of at the time, so they tried hard not to rock the boat. They had me some years later, actually right here in Southern California, and they tried to raise me with the same Asian values that they were raised with: meekness, humility, and obedience. And they taught me not to complain. When I would grumble about having a mean bus driver in elementary school, my parents told me stories about how they had to walk to school for miles and miles through the snow, carrying loads of books on their backs. And my smart-ass response was, "I don't think it snowed in Saigon, Mom and Dad." When I would complain that I couldn't go outside to play with my friends and instead had to stay indoors and work on fifth grade math problems when I was like in second grade, my parents said they couldn't go outside at all because the Viet Cong were bombing their cities. So I learned to just stop complaining and I just shut up. I actually came here today. My husband says, if you ask him, that I complain a lot. So he has a whole different take on this story. And it was in fact his idea that I come here today and complain to all of you instead, because I think he was tired of listening to me complain at home. So here's my chance. I'm going to stand up here and complain to all of you and hope that you listen. So here I am, and here are my grievances. Gripe number 1, shopping sucks when you're blind. The nature of the business I'm in, I do a lot of public speaking, and I have my own cooking show called Four Senses. So I'm in the public eye, I'm in front of people, I'm in front of cameras a lot of the time, and I have to care about how I look. And let me dispel a myth for you, all of you here and right now, that just because I can't see how I look doesn't mean I don't care how I look. And you know, if I wish I could not care. I mean, if I had my choice, I would be up here right now in my pajamas and barefoot, probably giving this talk, but I do have to care. It's socially acceptable for me to care. And unfortunately, I'm not rich enough yet to have my own hair, makeup, and wardrobe team follow me everywhere I go, so most of the time I'm doing my own hair, putting on my own makeup, and dressing myself. So did I do okay today? Before I lost my vision, I read a lot of fashion magazines, and I loved to shop. And these are probably habits that I picked up from my mom, who actually turned an entire room of our 3-bedroom home when I was growing up into her own personal walk-in closet. And of course, after I lost my vision, it wasn't that I stopped loving to shop, but I had to figure out a new way to do it. Malls were crowded. I was afraid of escalators. As you can imagine, that's a challenge for someone who can't see, so I kind of avoided malls altogether. And luckily, at the time that I was losing my vision, cyber shopping became much more mainstream. But unfortunately for me, not being able to see the two-dimensional nature of online shopping, not being able to feel the fabric or touch the cut of a dress and know what it looks like, it was hard for me to figure out what it was that I was, quote-unquote, looking at. Neuroscientific research actually shows that when a person loses their vision, their brain reorganizes itself so that the other 4 senses become more dominant. So for example, when a person learns to read Braille, the part of the cerebral cortex that once received and processed nerve impulses from the eyes rewires itself so that it starts receiving and processing nerve impulses from the fingertips. A lot of people ask me after I've lost my vision if my senses have heightened, and if that's how I've been able to cook on MasterChef and how I have this extraordinary palate like Gordon Ramsay says. And in actuality, I wouldn't say that my senses are better per se, but I will say that I'm much more sensitive to what my ears, my nose, my tongue, and my fingers take in, because this is the new paradigm through which I have to take in this world. So because I can't see or hear or smell or taste or touch the clothes through the computer monitor, online shopping still remains a challenge. There's often times when I would use my screen reader to read item descriptions, and they're not very clear or very helpful. And the worst is when a brand would use very convoluted names for their colors, like mildew and LSD. I mean, how am I supposed to know what that is, right? Like, I'm picturing a rainbow. I don't really know. So that's difficult. My wish is that developers and programmers would follow good programming practices and use proper HTML and tag it so that I can, for example, use my screen reader to navigate through headers and find this checkout button. And if you're in e-commerce, you know exactly how important it is for a consumer like myself to be able to find and click on that checkout button. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973 was amended in 1998 to include Section 508, which is a mandate that required federal agencies to make their electronic and information technologies accessible to people with disabilities. And this was 17 years ago. Think about that. 17 years ago, and it was only required of the government. And I feel like this mandate should be expanded to make it required of everyone, not just the government. This conversation that we've been having a lot in the media lately about equality, this needs to include the dialogue with people with disabilities. And you know, I think about that a lot. And I also think about how we would be upset, for example, if a particular business barred women or the LGBT or Asians from shopping at their stores. And it's kind of the same thing if you put yourself in my shoes. Right now, as a visually impaired person, I'm barred from many online stores because it's not accessible. I'm barred from viewing many websites or using a lot of web apps simply because they're inaccessible. So that was my first gripe. My gripe number 2 is entertainment and television sucks when you're blind. So ever since being on MasterChef, a lot of people tell me that I'm like the real-life Daredevil. And for those of you who don't know, Daredevil is a superhero character who's also blind. And I haven't read a comic book in years, but when Daredevil came out on Netflix last month, I decided to sit down and try to tune in because I kind of wanted to see like who this dude was that everyone kept comparing me to. So I tried to watch it. And it was difficult for me to follow because there's a lot of action going on. It was hard for me to figure out like whose voice belonged to whom, and I was annoying my husband because I kept talking over the show. And it was just very difficult. And I wasn't the only one that noticed this irony. The fact that I was someone who's blind, and I couldn't follow a show or enjoy a show about another person who is blind. And there was a petition that I'm sure some of you have heard about that was created after the season premiered, and it was about wanting to make Netflix to make the show accessible by adding audio description. And fortunately, Netflix followed suit, and they not only added audio description to Daredevil, but to also all of its other original programming. And that's a good thing because I've been watching House of Cards, and that's kind of hard to follow when you're just listening to dialogue and a lot of silent scenes and you don't know what's going on. So that's been nice. And my show, Four Senses, is a cooking show, and it originally airs on AMI, or Accessible Media, Inc. And what AMI does, it's a network that's completely dedicated to providing television for the hearing and vision impaired. So it makes inclusive entertainment for everyone. And I love AMI and what its mission is and what it stands for, but I wish that it wouldn't be the sole responsibility of a single network to bring inclusive entertainment for all. I feel like this should be something that all production companies and all networks are responsible for, and that should be shared. So remember that just because someone is blind doesn't mean they don't enjoy art and pop culture. And when my friends sit down to talk about Don Draper and what's going to happen next on Mad Men, I want to be able to join in on that conversation as well. So that's my gripe number 2. So my first gripe was about making technology accessible. My second gripe was about making entertainment accessible. Do you guys see where I'm going here? in the theme of TED. So before I go into my next gripe, actually, I'm going to do a little exercise with all of you. So I want you to all put yourself in my shoes. So close your eyes, everyone in the audience, and don't lie to me just because I'm blind. Once your eyes are closed, I want you to take your phone and then try to take either a selfie or a picture of me and Instagram it and tag me. I'm the blind cook. Can you guys do it? Welcome to my world, guys. Anyone? All right, I'll stop you guys there, so I don't have to be miserable this whole time. Did anyone succeed? Don't raise your hand, just make a sound so I can't see you. No one? All right. Now you know what it's like to live my world. So my third gripe number 3. This world is not designed to include the blind. As you just experienced and learned, social media is very difficult for not being able to see. And I'm actually very active on social media. That's how I stay in touch with my fans. That's how I let people know what I'm doing. It's difficult. Even coming here to do this talk, you saw me walk on stage with my cane, and I was being guided, and it was hard not to make sure I don't fall in these heels, and make sure I find this circular rug that I'm on, and make sure I'm facing the audience, and that's difficult. Even traveling here to San Diego from my hometown of Houston, that was difficult. Next time you're at an airport, put yourself in my shoes and close your eyes and see how you can get through security checkpoint without leaving anything behind or having people annoyed with you for being a little slower. And then try to find the public restroom in the airport with your eyes closed. And then try to find a stall. And try to find the toilet paper, put the seat cover down, and find the flusher, all with your eyes closed. And you know that when you can't see, you're imagining the worst, that everything's like covered in feces, right? So you have to think about that, like how stressful that is. And then afterwards, you try to find the sink, and then paper towel or the hand dryer. It's all very stressful. And even something like eating. It's one of my favorite things to do that we all have to do to stay alive and sustain ourselves. Even that is often stressful. When you're in a restaurant, next time, close your eyes and see how many times you forget that there's a straw in your water and you poke yourself in the eye or in the nose. I do that all the time, and it's embarrassing. And order some sushi and try to eat it with chopsticks and see how often that lands in your lap instead of your mouth. Or try to see if you can tell which is the rice and which is the wasabi. And I've actually done that quite a few times, and it's not fun. So these are things that I go through, or other visually impaired people go through as well. And it's all funny now to me, and these blind misadventures that I have, but it wasn't always kind of a funny thing. It took me a while to adjust to this because I wasn't born blind. When you're young, you think you're invincible. And I was in college at the time when I had my first experience with optic neuritis or optic nerve inflammation. And I was 20, and like many of you, I was in college. And at the time, I didn't think that I would ever go blind, or even if I did, I didn't think it would be something that would happen until I was in my 80s. And here I was, 20 years old in college, and I thought that this wasn't really fair. I thought I was exempt from these sorts of things. I thought, if anything, in college, I should only be worrying about boys and final exams and which part of my body to pierce next, and not something as serious and chronic as blindness. But here I was, 20 years old, losing my vision. And I was put through a battery of tests, from MRIs to spinal tap to a lot of blood work, to try to figure out what was wrong with me. And the doctors took a long time to figure it out. At first, they thought I had multiple sclerosis, so I was put on a treatment plan that involved daily injections that I had to give to myself. And then they noticed that didn't work, because regardless of the treatments, I was still having attack after attack. And it wasn't until I was 23 years old that I was officially and correctly diagnosed with neuromyelitis optica, or NMO. What NMO is a rare autoimmune disease that affects the neurological system, primarily the optic nerves and the spinal cord. And I've been fortunate that I've been relapse-free for about 8 years once the doctors figured out that I had NMO and put me on a treatment plan that worked for me. But before that, before my NMO was stabilized, I went through a lot of attacks. Year after year, month after month, there was just attack after attack. My worst one happened in 2002, and I was going over a course of 4 days from being a fully functioning adult, being able to walk and do everything, seeing okay, for the most part. I think at the time, one of my eyes was bad, but the other one was fine. I went from being a fully functioning adult to completely paralyzed from my neck down. And it was a hard time for me to understand, because I went from fully functioning to all of a sudden being this adult mind that was trapped in an infant's body. And no matter how hard I willed for my big toe to move, it wouldn't. And it was frustrating for me, to say the least, especially because I've been such an independent person all of my life. And it was hard, and I was in the hospital, and I was put on a lot of drugs. The doctors put me on seizure medication because my muscles were cramping a lot. They put me on morphine because I was in pain. And they put me on corticosteroids, which helps with inflammation. And they were trying to figure out how to stop this attack. And I underwent a lot of physical and occupational therapy. And the worst was that at the same time, I was still experiencing bouts of optic neuritis. So there were weeks at a time when I would be laid up in bed and unable to see, unable to move, and unable to sleep because all of the drugs I was on was causing insomnia. So I had a lot of time to think, and that can be very scary. I thought about how things that once seemed so simple, like being able to open a door or use the restroom by myself, now had become so suddenly monumentally difficult. I thought about how my priorities changed overnight, how I went from wanting a better job, more money, a faster car, to wishing that I could just get up from my bed and walk to the fridge and pour myself a glass of water. And I remember thinking distinctly that this was all I wanted to be able to do with my life again. It took me 9 months to recover from this spinal inflammation. And I fortunately did recover. As you could tell, I walked here on stage just fine. But my vision was obviously a different story. My vision continued to deteriorate over time. In 2004, it decreased to a level where I had to stop driving. And I started magnifying the font on my computer to 35 point. So you can imagine that's like pretty big, right? But I started, that's how I would read print. And I had to contrast the font so that it would be white font on a black background. And in 2007, my vision deteriorated to the level where I could no longer walk around without assistance from a sighted guide or a cane. And I had to stop reading print altogether and start using a computer screen reader to feed me audibly everything on my computer screen, my emails, et cetera. So my vision today is what the doctors call counting fingers in both eyes. So I don't even register on the visual acuity scale. I would say that depending on the lighting, I can maybe count fingers at a distance of about maybe 10 to 12 inches. And I best describe it as if you were to imagine coming out of a really hot shower and you look into that steamy, foggy mirror, that's kind of what I see. So I see a little bit of color, a little bit of shape, but mostly shadows. So that's my world, and that's what I see. Up here, I stand here, and I know there's like a bright light right here, but I can't really see anything. I don't really see I know there's a circle rug because I was able to come up here earlier and feel it out, but I don't see much, which kind of helps doing public speaking because I don't see how massive the audience is, so I'm a little less scared, right? But that's, my vision, and that's what I see. So just try to put yourself in my shoes and try to live life that way and try to cook and go about your daily business and work on your papers or do your writing. And it's not fun all the time, but I've been fortunate that I've been able to adapt quite well. NMO is something that has affected me a lot, obviously, and I stand here and tell you this story, and it's rough, and it's a personal story of mine, and I struggle with it sometimes to just tell this story, and it makes me nervous because I don't know how people will take it. But I want you to remember that NMO and blindness or disabilities are not things that everyone is exempt from. And life is very difficult sometimes, and life is ever-changing, and aging is inevitable. And I want you all to think about, I know that you may not be able to relate to my gripes that I have up here today and relate to my own personal life experiences, and I know you probably can't relate to my blindness, but remember, and this may sound a little bit depressing, but remember that we are all not just abled or disabled, but we're all just temporarily abled. Because like I said, aging is inevitable, life is inevitable, and life is surprising. And disability or blindness can affect our parents, our grandparents, our children, our best friends, and ourselves. So when that time comes, don't you want this world to kind of be ready and designed for you? Okay, I'm not going to keep going depressing, okay? So I'm going to try to pick it up a little here. My husband actually asked me recently if I could have my vision back and go back, but I had to go back to living the life that I had before, would I? And the answer that may surprise you is I said no. And the reason I say no is because NMO and blindness have taught me that it's okay to ask for help sometimes. And more than often than not, people are always willing to help. NMO and blindness have taught me that it's okay to do what you love and to do what you're good at. And I've been given that opportunity, fortunately. And NMO has taught me that you should live life fearlessly. And I've actually gone skydiving and picked up snowboarding after I lost my vision. And my philosophy in life now is that you really can't fear what you can't see. So it's taught me to be fearless. And it's taught me that I should live life unapologetically. And most of all, though, I think what disability has taught me is compassion. And being an only child growing up, I was selfish. And now I'm much more compassionate. And it's given me this platform to advocate for women, for ethnic minorities, for artists, and for the differently abled. And I'm fortunate and I'm blessed to be able to stand here and talk to all of you about those issues that I think we will all face one day. Like I said, I know that this doesn't necessarily affect a lot of you now, but like I said, we're all just temporarily abled, so remember that. I'm here to be able to advocate for that and to make you guys all think about what it's like to live in my shoes. And when you see people, try not to think of them as disabled, people like me who are visually impaired, but think of them as differently abled. And I find that another thing that I've really learned from my NMO and my blindness is that at the end of the day, we are all different on the outside, but we're very much the same on the inside. And we all have the same human desires to be loved and to be respected and to be understood. And so in some way, in one way or another, we are all in search of this inclusivity. And I think that's important, and to remember that we're all in search of inclusivity and we're all humans. My parents came here to the United States with hope, because they were hopeful that their lives would be better. And while I'm sure that didn't include having a daughter that would eventually be diagnosed with NMO or lose her vision, I'm also willing to bet that they didn't expect to have a daughter win MasterChef and to be standing up here one day to give a TEDx talk. So I guess it all evens out in the end, right? But my parents were hopeful, and they instilled hope in me, and that was probably the most important value that they instilled in me. And I'm still hopeful in spite of all the gripes that I've given all of you today standing up here. I'm hopeful that my talk will motivate you to see the world as the blind do. And my hope is that you too will see that it's an idea worth spreading. Thank you.